Welcome back to Let's Talk Elections. Here at Let's Talk Elections, we cover House, Senate, and general elections looking forward to 2024 and forward after 2024. But as we're taking a look at this, guys, we're doing a Trump versus Biden election prediction, the most likely possible scenario that we're going to have for 2024. Now, as we're looking at the electoral map here, there are several key things to know before we actually get into where the country is headed, and that is how the country voted. That is how the country voted in 2020, as well as whether or not polling data is reliable for 2024, and whether or not the 2016 election has to tell us anything about how the country is going to vote on 2024 and the issues that voters have. So let's get right into it with the first thing that we want to look at, and that is general election polling. General election polling in 2020, and then comparing that to 2024, because it's really important to test the accuracy of these polls, or else we will lose insight into where the country is headed for 2024. Taking a look here at some 2020 polling data for the general election. Now, this is the election on a whole. This is just basically voters from Kansas to New York to Wisconsin to any of the states. General election polling. You can see that Biden throughout the 2020 race held a pretty big lead compared to Donald Trump. This is actually not throughout the 2020 race, but this is actually nearing the election. He held a very big lead, 5, 7, 10 double point leads compared to Donald Trump. Although when you actually look at the election in 2024, or rather 2020, you can see that Joe Biden only won by 4 points, which means that the popular vote polling was actually not that inaccurate. Although when you look at the actual states, in states like Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, when you look at these polls, you can see that Biden actually only won the election of 2020 by around 45,000 votes, assuming that all Trump and Biden voters stick with their candidates which they picked in 2020 and vote the same way in 2024. But 45,000 of them in Wisconsin, Arizona, and Georgia do not vote for Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Now, I understand that is a very, very ideal scenario. That is not an actual scenario that may not occur. Although that being said, you have to recognize that although Joe Biden won in the popular vote by around 7 million votes, he actually only won in a handful of states by about 45,000 votes. Joe Biden could have been about maybe 5 points ahead of Joe Biden could have lost the 2020 election if he's 7 million votes ahead of Donald Trump, and yet he lost 45,000 votes in those key critical states. That is how close 2020 was. Although, what did the polling tell us in 2020? Well, in the general election, it showed that Joe Biden was ahead in basically every single poll. Now that begs the question, how is it like in 2016 and how is it like in 2024? Because let's take a look here at some 2016 polls here, taking a look here at some national polls. You can see that Hillary Clinton had an enduring lead over Donald Trump, although by a smaller margin than Joe Biden. Joe Biden, taking a look here at some presidential election polling, Joe Biden had a 5, 6 to 10 point lead basically over Donald Trump. Yet when you look at Hillary Clinton's lead over Donald Trump, you can see that it was a bare 3 to 5 point margin. 3 to 5 points may seem like a lot, although it is actually not a lot. Because when you take a look here at the 2016 election map, you can see here how Donald Trump barely won in some key swing states, which means that if you keep that constant of proportionality intact there when you're looking at 2016 and the fact that Hillary Clinton was ahead of Donald Trump by 3 points, yet still lost in the election. Joe Biden was ahead by 5 points, yet he barely won the election, 5 to 10 points in the polls. You can get a general trend line for where this is headed. You can see that in 2016 and 2020, Donald Trump was behind in polling data in a head-to-head matchup on the general election for Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. He was behind, yet he still won in 2016, and he almost won in 2020. But taking a look here at some national polls, this is bad news for Democrats. Trump is ahead or tied up with Joe Biden, or Biden is leading for the 2024 race. What does this mean? Well, it means the Democrats are not in a good position whatsoever. They're tied with Donald Trump, which is bad. Democrats do not want to be tied with Donald Trump. They need to be at least where they were in 2020, where they were 5 to 10 points ahead of Donald Trump, which meant that they only won in the actual election by 45,000 votes in some few critical states. This is bad news for Democrats in 2024. And I'm not the only channel to predict this. Elections predictions 2024, several other channels, Ready Go Politics, which is obviously more conservative, but even channels like election predictions official, a lot of channels are showing that these trends which you are seeing in 2016 and 2020 can also affect 2024 and lead to a Biden loss in 2024, which shows why when you look at 2016 election and the 2020 election, you can see where this all stands. That being said, you have the issue of abortion. Now, the issues which are new, you have to consider, okay, so Democrats are basically in a bad position if you look at periodic trends from 2016 and 2020. Although, what are some new things that have emerged in 2024 to make Democrats look at these polls and then take a look at some of these polls right over here, and then take a look at these polls from 2020 and say, hey, we're not in a bad position? Well, you have the issue of abortion, which has significantly undermined the GOP in the 2022 midterms. The GOP was supposed to have a red wave in 2022, yet that red wave was a dwindling. It was a dwindling. It was basically a red sprinkle throughout the country in the House. In the Senate, Republicans actually lost in the Senate. So you have to take a look at that as well. Abortion is going to be a key issue. That being said, you have to recognize what voters were actually thinking about in 2022. In 2022, abortion had been overturned in June or July, I believe. I think it's June 2022. The election was held in November 2022. That was perfect for Democrats. You have to recognize that the overturning of Roe v. Wade was the most important key issue for 2024 election in bringing it home for Democrats. Democrats were behind on inflation. They were behind on issues like the economy with voters. But why did they not lose by a big margin? It was because of abortion. Why? Because voters have short-term memory. Voters have short-term memory. They have they don't have very acute memory, which means that when you're looking to 2024, which is 2.5 years after the overturning of Roe v. Wade, some voters may be like, hey, I'm just going to vote on the economy, compared to 2022 when some voters who were extremely pro-choice said, I'm going to flip my vote from Republican to Democrat because of the abortion issue, because that happened 5 months before. Voters have short-term memory, and that June 2022 overturning of abortion really helped Democrats. I guarantee you 100% that if abortion had been overturned in January 2022, you would have a very, very different result. January 2023, rather, you would have a very different result than you had for the 2022 midterms, because of the fact that you had that abortion issue just about 4 months before the election, and it really helped Democrats out. I don't think it's going to be a huge issue in 2024. Why? Because it's been about 2.5 years since the abortion issue has been overturned by the 2024 election, which is why I have to address that concern specifically. Another concern is Trump's legal indictments. Now, the legal indictments are extremely important because this is obviously what has changed from 2016 to 2020, which is why it makes Democrats look at this polling data and say, hey, we have a path forward with Biden as our nominee, even though the periodic trends in 2020 and 2024 and 2016, rather, are not good. They're Trump's legal indictments. Now, when you look at Trump's legal indictments, you have to consider a couple of things. Number one, is he going to be convicted? Okay. Well, legal analysts say that he will be convicted by 2024, by March or May 2024. That being said, will it have a big impact on the general public? Obviously, I'm making an assumption here. I'm assuming that Donald Trump will be convicted. If he gets convicted, for me, I would say the case which he will probably be convicted on first would probably be election interference in Georgia, or possibly the New York civil case. Now, which one has a stronger chance of occurring first? I think the New York DOJ, New York case will have a bigger chance of ending quicker because of the fact that Letitia James is really on Donald Trump and she really wants to get Donald Trump convicted. She wants $75 million for the state of New York from Donald Trump. So she's really on it for Donald Trump. In fact, you had Don Jr. and Eric Trump going and testifying in court, which shows that they are actually very concerned about that case moving forward. Also, you have the assets of Donald Trump being seized by the New York government, saying that Donald Trump can no longer do business in the state of New York. So you have several issues that you have to look at. With that being said, if he gets convicted, will he have a poll drop? Definitely. He will have a poll drop. There's no way that he will not have a poll drop because he's obviously convicted. That being said, the conviction may roll out as an indictment because the problem is that Donald Trump is probably not going to be in jail. Okay, Donald Trump is probably not going to be in jail because when you have a front runner who by May basically of 2024, if the conviction is going to happen, it's going to happen in 2024, definitely. Okay, it's going to happen in 2024. By that time, Donald Trump's most likely to become the GOP nominee. Most likely, they won't put a GOP nominee against the current president in jail. Most likely, they won't do that. Now, for Democrats, what's good for Democrats right now, and I'm going through all the scenarios. What's good for Democrats is that Donald Trump gets convicted before the GOP primary. Because if he gets convicted before the GOP primary, then he has a chance to be either they can stop him from campaigning or other issues like that. Although if he's the Republican nominee, I doubt that the court would actually put him in jail for that reason and prevent him from campaigning if he's the Republican nominee and a presidential frontrunner. So if he doesn't go in jail, then it might not have a big impact on voters as much as an indictment. The conviction might just come out as an indictment because, hey, he just goes to court, he gets convicted, and then he comes back out. And on top of that, if he wins the election, basically all the court cases are dropped at that point, basically, because most of them are federal issues, and they're most likely not going to put a president of the United States in jail or something like that. That generally doesn't happen. So you have that issue in mind. I think that the conviction might come out as an indictment. It may have the basic, when I say it's going to come out as an indictment, I'm going to say that it's going to have the implications of an indictment, meaning that it may not have that much issue on the voter because voters didn't really change after the Trump indictments happened. After the Trump indictments, nobody really changed with regards to who they were going to vote for in 2024 after the indictment. Now, when you look at the polls with regards to people who say that the indictments are a big issue, people say, yeah, they're a big issue. But whether or not they're going to change their vote, that's another issue. Okay, that's another issue. So the conviction might come out as an indictment in that he's not going to go to jail. Now, if he goes to jail or something like that, then it may have a bigger impact. Although I doubt that that's going to happen if he's the Republican nominee, which is most likely going to happen. So those are basically two concerns which are top line for Democrats. Now, if he gets convicted before before he becomes the GOP nominee, which I basically think is presumptive at this point, as I believe Let's Talk Elections pointed out, that the GOP primary basically ended before it basically began. Okay, it basically ended before it began, which is going to be extremely important for 2024 because if he's a GOP nominee and he gets convicted, I doubt that they'd actually maximum they put him on probation, which probation is basically nothing. I don't think probation really does anything. That basically means that you're under probation. It's just basically a word that they say to you. He has got some gag orders. All of that isn't really seem to be affecting him in the polling. I think that the conviction is really going to affect him. As actually Cenk Uygur is pointing out that the convictions might not actually affect him in 2024. Cenk Uygur, liberal commentator over from Young Turks, he pointed out that they may not actually affect him in 2024 when he was doing an interview with Secular Talk, Kyle Klensky. So taking a look at this here, that is where the country stands with regards to the difference here, taking a look here at 2016 and comparing that to 2020 and then taking a look at 2024. Now, taking a look here at basically what the issues are in the 2024 race here. Inclusivity, willing to compromise, effective to push their agenda in Washington, D.C., basically Congress. Ability to work with Congress is extremely important for any president. Sticks to morals and principles, good for the economy and tough on crime. Those are basically six issues which this poll laid out. For inclusivity, Democrats obviously had inclusivity covers LGBTQ plus issues, systemic racism, black and minority population, other issues like that. You have gender transition, transgenderism, lesbian, bisexuals, individuals that fall in that group, queer individuals, Black Lives Matter, basically border might be an issue on that, the border wall, issues like that. And Democrats do lead by 15 points. Willing to compromise, Democrats are ahead there. Obviously, willing to compromise and effective in pushing their agenda in Washington can basically be grouped into the same category. Obviously, Democrats are ahead in this, obviously because of the fact that Kevin McCarthy was ousted by Matt Gaetz, which wasn't really the best thing for the GOP. It wasn't a good thing that Matt Gaetz ousted Kevin McCarthy out, because the fact of the matter that it gave to the general public the idea that the Republicans don't know what they're doing. And that may have been true or that may have been false. All that being said, it really had a bad perception on the public, which makes it a big possibility that the Republicans could lose the House in 2024. By the way, I have a video for the House prediction. You can check that out in the link in the description below. But Democrats do lead by 13 points and 12 points, respectively. Sticks to their morals and principles, basically an effective tie. If it's within 2 points for this, I'm going to give it as being basically a tie since it's probably within the margin of error. Sticks to their morals and principles. You can debate that, obviously, on LGBTQ plus issues. You could debate that. You could debate that with regards to tax cuts, other issues like that. Good for the economy. Republicans lead by 10 points. Obviously, inflation, gas prices, other issues like that. Republicans do lead. Tough on crime. Republicans are ahead by 18 points. So 18 points there for the Republicans with regards to being tough on crime. Obviously, being tough on crime more for the Republicans there. It's basically been like that throughout all of history. Taking a look here at how the country voted in 2020 and how close Biden's margin was in 2020 rather. Biden was extremely close in Wisconsin. In fact, he only won Wisconsin by 20,000 votes. Georgia, he won by, I believe, 12,000 votes. In Arizona, he won by 12,000 votes once again. Pennsylvania, it was a bit of a bigger margin. And also in the state of Michigan, it was a lot of a bigger margin. It was about 150,000 votes, which explains why you had that difference there. So taking a look at this here, we are going to be taking a look at the 2024 actual map here, guys. Taking a look here at the actual map. Now, I've gone through a lot of the issues and the data, and a lot of you guys didn't want me to actually look at polls, since a lot of you guys said that polls are not representative of the 2024 race. That may be true, which is why I'm not looking at actual state polls. So that's why I'm not looking at state polls. I'm just looking at the election as a whole here. But taking a look here at the map here, and going ahead and giving the states to the respective candidates here. Obviously, we're going to go ahead and give some of the safe states to each respective candidate here for 2024. Taking a look here at these individual states here and giving them to respective candidates with regards to the extremities voting for the Democrats and the Great Plains area, the Midwest basically voting for the Democrats. Taking a look here, California, Washington, and Oregon, obviously extremely liberal cities there for the Democrats. 2 of Maine's congressional districts and 3 of Nebraska's congressional districts will vote Republican. I will also give this some likely states here. Colorado and New Mexico obviously voted for the Democrats by around plus 10 margins in 2020. Colorado by a plus 14% margin. Taking a look at this here, I'm going to go ahead and give the state of Utah as being safe Republican. I'm also going to go going ahead and giving the state of Hawaii as being safe Democrat there. So the safe Democrat there for the state of Hawaii there. Moving on here, taking a look here at the state of Ohio and Ohio, I'm going to be giving that as being likely. I'm going to be going ahead and giving Illinois as being safe. Also, the state of Iowa as being likely. The reason why I gave Ohio and Iowa as being likely is that because of the fact that they were battlegrounds in the past in 2004 and 2012, extremely close. Although that being said, 2012 wasn't that close, actually. Barack Obama won up by a sizable margin by around 3 points. Although that being said, they have been trending extremely Democrat since 2016, so that is the reason why we'll give it in that direction. Taking a look here, likely states for the Republicans, also the state of Florida. Ron DeSantis won in that state by a pretty big margin in the 2022 midterms. That being said, I don't like to base everything off of midterms or try to keep it as consistent with Republicans and Democrats, which is why that I don't think that Biden is going to win Pennsylvania by 5 points like John Fetterman did in the 2022 midterms. I don't think that Donald Trump is going to win the state of Florida by 20 points like the way Ron DeSantis did in the 2022 midterms. Because you have different candidates. Just because you have an REP and a DEM beside your name, or a GOP and DNC beside your name, that doesn't mean that voters are going to vote for you. You obviously have personalities, different issues, clarity, issues like that are obviously going to be issues where individuals stand on individual issues. Obviously, Trump and DeSantis have a few differences there, which will obviously make it difficult for all Floridians to vote for him. Pennsylvania's obviously had different issues when it came to voting for John Fetterman compared to be voting for Joe Biden. Taking a look here, Alaska is also likely voted for Donald Trump by a 10-plus margin. Not going to second guess myself on that. Texas is going lean. Texas is going lean for the Republican Party. Now, some of you were criticizing me in some of my videos for putting it as being lean. I believe I responded to most of you. But Texas is a state which will be interesting to watch with regards to demographic shifts, other issues like that. Gerrymandering is another issue which is important, which I touched on a little bit in my last video, the House election prediction. Again, guys, the link for that video is in the description below. Make sure you guys take a look at that. But gerrymandering is going to be extremely important for 2024. That being said, Republicans did do relatively well in the Senate race, in one of the Senate races in 2022. Because of the fact that they won in Texas by 10 points. Although that being said, that was not for the entire state. That was for part of the state, which could change in 2028 and 2032. Definitely a state which Republicans need to be keeping an eye on. Democrats can really make some differences there if they work really hard on the state of Texas. Taking a look here at the state of Virginia, I'm going to be going ahead and giving this being lean. Joe Biden won that by a 5-point margin. Hillary Clinton also won that by a 5-point margin. Taking a look here at the state of New Hampshire here, I'm going to be going ahead and giving it as being likely. The reason why I'm going to be going ahead and giving New Hampshire as being likely is that Joe Biden won this state by a pretty sizable margin in 2020, which is why I'm going to be going ahead and giving that by a pretty relatively good margin to Joe Biden as being likely. Moving on here, we're going to go ahead and give the state of Minnesota. I'm going to be going ahead and giving the state of Minnesota as being lean for Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden will be able to win that state. He won that by around a 7-point margin in 2020, which is why I believe that he will win it by as lean in 2024. That being said, Hillary Clinton only won in the state by a 0.6% margin in 2016, which may make some skeptics with regards to that specific state. Taking a look here, one of Maine's congressional districts will be likely for the GOP. The reason, I'll put it as being likely. Yeah, I'll put it as being likely for now. The reason why I'm going to be putting it as being likely is because Donald Trump won that in both 2016 and 2020. Won in 2020 by a very big margin. Actually, before 2016, the last Republican to win the state, that one congressional district, was actually in 1988 with the Bush versus Dukakis scenario, George H.W. Bush versus Dukakis scenario. That was the last time the Republican won that state, won that district rather, other than 2016 and 2020. It's running pretty solidly Republican since then. Taking a look here at some other states here: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. Extremely important states. These are the big seven for 2024. Looking forward to 2024. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, extremely important. Why? Because they voted by extremely close margins in 2020. Michigan voted for Joe Biden by around a 2.4% margin. Wisconsin only by a 0.6% margin. Pennsylvania, 1.2% margin. Georgia, they only voted by, I believe this is a little bit off. It's actually 0.3%. Yeah, that's correct. I was thinking about Pennsylvania, but Georgia only by 0.3% margin. Arizona only by 0.4% margin. Nevada 2.4% margins. Extremely important race. That being said, Florida 3.5% margin. That being said, Ron DeSantis flipped there for 2020, really changed the dynamics of Florida. It was trending right to begin with. Since 2016, Florida has been trending right. Even in the 2018 midterms, it has been trending right since then, I would say. I wouldn't say from 2016 to 2018, I don't think you had really a big shift. It voted for Ron DeSantis by about the same margin that it voted for Donald Trump in 2016. But since 2018, Ron DeSantis has been really able to flip that state with regards to how the individuals in that state vote, and obviously bringing in more Republican voters into that state from other heavily populated states there with regards to California and New York. Taking a look here at some other states here. We're going to go ahead and basically go from the west to the east just so that way we can be as fair as possible with regards to the order in which we rank this chronologically. Taking a look here at the state of Nevada. Nevada here, I am going to be going ahead and giving this as being tilt for the Democrats. The reason why I'm going to be going ahead and giving this as tilt is because of the fact that Joe Biden did win the state by a sizable margin. 2.4%, I believe, is a sizable margin. Not a very small margin. That being said, it may change in 2024. Again, we are 1 year removed, almost around 1 year removed from the election. So things may change domestically, legally, foreignly, and politically within both sides of the political aisle. The economy might get a little bit worse or it might get better. Depending on what Joe Biden does, basically, we might hit a really good economic state. Inflation might come crashing down. Inflation has actually been coming down. Although that being said, inflation is actually coming down with regards to the amount of inflation being added on top of the existing inflation, which may make it laborious for some individuals within the middle class. That being said, it has been coming down. If it really comes down in the negative values, that would really be helpful for Joe Biden. That being said, it's really good for Trump. Now that inflation is going up, the economy is not in a good position. He can easily point down to his economy and try to rebound off of that. All that being said, if Joe Biden can get the economy going, at the end of the day, as Bill Clinton basically used the slogan to win in 2022, he said that it's about the economy, and that's how he won in 1992 and basically 1996. That's why individuals voted for Bill Clinton, and that's why he had landslide elections. If Joe Biden's able to turn the economy around, he's almost guaranteed for 2024. There's no doubt about that. Taking a look at the state of Arizona, I'm going to go ahead and give you the state as being tilt for the Republicans. The reason why is because Arizona has only become an extremely competitive state really within the last two presidential elections. Before that, in 2008, in the Barack Obama landslide of 2008 and basically 2012, you had that John McCain won that state in the state of Arizona. That being said, you may give it to him as being a state with John McCain may have won automatically since he was the governor of that state, and most individuals do tend to win their home state. He did win that state. So John McCain did win that state, which is really a referendum on whether or not Donald Trump can hold that. Taking a look here at some other states here, looking here at the state of Georgia. For the state of Georgia here, it is going to be extremely important state to look at looking forward to 2024. Although that being said, the state of Georgia, you have to recognize a couple of things. We had 0.3% margin for 2020. So taking a look here, the state of Georgia, 0.3% margin, which was an extremely close margin. Taking a look back at the 2016 election at the state of Georgia, let me zoom down. Let me go down a little bit. But taking a look here at the state of Georgia, you see here, if I just zoom in a little bit, so that way you can just see that there. So taking a look at the state of Georgia, Donald Trump won in the state by 5.1%, which is a lot bigger than the margin that he won in 2020 rather, in which the margin that Biden won, taking votes away. Donald Trump had a margin difference of about 5.3 4%, which is a pretty big margin, although, it may switch. That being said, I do think that issues such as the economy, other issues, can really bring it home for voters. Although that being said, you do have other issues, obviously, LGBTQ plus inclusion, diversity, equity, who are willing to compromise, effective agenda. Obviously, Mike Johnson coming back in with regards to Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson, whether or not you agree with his stances against LGBTQ plus issues is obviously going to be extremely important for 2024. I'm not saying that I'm against or for what he's actually promoting, but that being said, it will be bad if the majority of the country finds out exactly what he believes with regards to gay marriage, because Mike Johnson is extremely against gay marriage, which means that will be bad if the average voter knows about that. It'll be really bad if the average voter knows about that, because sometimes people can tie the Republican House of Representatives with Donald Trump, or they could tie the Senate Democrats with Joe Biden. So you have to consider that as well. House Republicans and Donald Trump, and Senate Republicans and and Donald Trump may be linked together. Senate Democrats and Joe Biden may be linked together, and House Democrats and Joe Biden may be linked together as well. So several issues that you have to know there. I'm going to be going ahead and giving the state of Georgia as being tilt for the Republicans there. Tilt there with its 16 electoral votes there with regards to that. North Carolina also being tilt for the Republicans. The reason why is because of the fact that Donald Trump won the state from 2012, 2016, and 2020. So I'm going to be going ahead and giving that state there to him. Taking a look here at the state of Wisconsin. Wisconsin is going to be extremely important state. Obviously the most conservative state in the Rust Belt states. That being said, you may see some differences going forward to 2024. Although that being said, I do think that since it's the most conservative state in the union, and the fact that polling data was so off in 2020, and polling data right now is showing Trump a little bit ahead, I'm going to be going ahead and giving it to Donald Trump. Taking a look here at the state of Michigan. I'm going ahead and giving it as being tilt to the Democrats. Michigan is a much more liberal state. It is going to be interesting seeing how it votes in 2024. All that being said, did vote for Biden by the biggest margin, and the polling data, I believe, in the state of Michigan was off by a lot. Although that being said, it did predict that Joe Biden would win the election by 2.4%. By the way, 2.4% is a lot. Okay, 2.4% is a lot for a swing state. So I'm going to be going ahead and giving this to Joe Biden. Taking a look here at another state here, Pennsylvania. I'm going ahead and giving this state as being tilt for Donald Trump. Now that puts Donald Trump at 291 electoral votes and Joe Biden at 246 electoral votes. Now this is an extremely close race, guys. You have to recognize the different issues will obviously move voters' minds from abortion to the economy to inflation to gay issues, to other issues like that. They'll obviously be overlapping and interlapping for 2024. Also, I'm going to be going ahead and giving Joe Biden one of the congressional districts in the state of Nebraska as being tilt. I forgot to put that one congressional district. But yeah, that one congressional district obviously going to Joe Biden. Obviously, the Omaha region's much more Democrat. Actually, House Republicans actually won in that district. Although that being said, I think the House Republican was a lot more favorable to Nebraskans in that congressional district in that Omaha region compared to Donald Trump, which is why I'm going to give it to Joe Biden. All that being said, this is an extremely close race. This is 247 to 291. A flip in Pennsylvania and Arizona could easily flip this. This flip in Wisconsin and Georgia could easily flip this. Very tiny shifts that you could see with regards to demographic population. Obviously, redistricting in states like Alabama, Georgia, and other states are obviously going to be extremely important. We have to notice, as one viewer pointed out in the comment section below, redistricting is going to be huge in the state of Georgia with regards to whether or not, I believe it was a comment with regards to Wisconsin about whether or not Wisconsin would strike down some redistricting that Republicans are trying to do. The Supreme Court did strike down Alabama redistricting, which was extremely important considering that you had a conservative majority on the Supreme Court, a 6-3 conservative to liberal majority. That being said, Wisconsin State Supreme Court is pretty liberal, so we'll see what they'll do. But that being said, this is the final prediction, 247 to 291, guys. If you disagree with this, again, guys, make sure you put that down in the comment section below. Write down in the comment section who you think is going to win the election. Please try to be constructive and be very specific if you want to ask me a question, really, because some of the questions that guys ask me are very broad. So try to make it more specific, and I'll try to answer as many questions as possible. So make sure you guys do that, and make sure you subscribe and like the video. And I'll be having more videos out later on in the week, next week rather, and I'll see you